The stars above the planet Varn burned like cold embers in a dark ocean. From orbit, the surface looked peaceful, silver oceans and glowing cities wrapped in mist. But peace had not touched this world for many years. The Dominion of Varn was fighting for survival against an enemy that knew no mercy. And in the middle of that war stood Princess Aruna, heir to the Varn throne. She was young, but her eyes already carried the weight of battle. The violet light of the command deck reflected off her polished armor as she watched another human ship descend through the clouds. The humans had come a long way from their home systems, and their arrival meant the difference between survival and extinction. Among them was Commander Rian, a man whose name carried more stories than medals. He was not tall, not royal, and not blessed by any grand destiny. Yet when he walked into the Varn command chamber, every soldier seemed to stand a little straighter. Aruna studied him carefully. His movements were calm, his words measured, but his eyes carried something strange, something she had never seen among her own people. It was not arrogance or fear. It was a quiet determination, like a mountain standing against a storm. "Commander Rian," she said, "you came without escort. Do humans always walk into danger alone?" Ryan gave a small smile. "Only when the cause is worth it." His voice was calm, but it carried a strength that made even her generals pause. The meeting room, filled with Varn officers, felt smaller with his presence. Aruna had heard many things about humans, that they were reckless, emotional, and stubborn beyond reason. She thought those were weaknesses. Now as she met this one, she wasn't so sure. She turned to the holomap showing the front lines. "Our fleets are breaking. The Dominion of Varn cannot survive another wave. We asked for aid, but your High Council only sent you." "I am not here to represent the Council," Ryan said quietly. "I came because I believe in something they don't." "And what is that?" she asked. "That peace is worth fighting for. And you, Princess, you fight for it." The room went silent. No alien had ever spoken to her like that. Not with flattery, but with truth. Her generals shifted uneasily, but she raised a hand. "Very well, human. You will advise me in battle. Let us see if your faith is stronger than your weapons." Ryan bowed slightly. "Then let us make a pact, Princess. You fight for your people. I'll fight for you." Those words, spoken so simply, would later be remembered in both human and Varn history. The war that united. 2 worlds the next months turned into chaos. The enemy, known as the Krell Dominion, advanced through space with cold precision. Their machines burned through planets and their ships moved like storms of fire. Aruna and Ryan fought side by side, 2 leaders from different worlds bound by one goal: survival. Ryan's strategies were bold, sometimes even foolish by Varn standards. Where the Varn valued caution and control, humans thrived on instinct and heart. When a Varn fleet was trapped in the Astal Nebula, Ryan ordered an impossible rescue mission through plasma storms. Aruna had called it madness until it worked. After the battle, as their ships floated among the wreckage, Aruna walked into the human command center. "You risked your fleet for a dozen ships," she said softly. "No one would have blamed you for retreating." Ryan shrugged. "Those dozen ships carry thousands of lives. If we give up on them, we lose something greater than victory." "And what is that?" "Our humanity," he said simply. His words stayed with her. She had seen her own people grow cold through endless war. They spoke of honor, but not mercy. They fought for the throne, not for each other. Yet this man, from a race once seen as primitive, spoke as if compassion itself were a weapon. That night, she stood on the deck of her flagship, watching the stars drift by. The sky felt endless, yet for the first time she didn't feel alone. Shadows of betrayal months turned into years. Together, Aruna and Ryan achieved what no alliance had ever done. They pushed back the Krell. The galaxy began to believe that the impossible might happen. The war could end, but victory always has a cost. The Human Council grew uneasy. Reports said their fleets were being stretched thin. Supplies were running low. Some claimed Ryan had gone too far, giving too much for alien causes. Secret messages passed between admirals. Orders changed. Aruna didn't know any of this. She trusted Rian completely. To her, he was not just an ally, but a symbol of hope, a reminder that strength did not come from power alone. Then came the day of the Alaris offensive. It was to be their final battle, a strike deep into Krell territory. If successful, it would end the war. In the war room, Ryan looked tired but focused. We'll go in from 3 sides, he explained, pointing to the hollow display. Your fleets will draw them out. My reinforcements will come from orbit once the first line breaks. Aruna nodded. And if they don't? He met her gaze. Then we hold the line until they do. I gave you my word. Those words comforted her. She trusted him with her life. The battle began with thunder. The Battle of Alaris space burned. Thousands of ships clashed in the black void. Plasma beams tore through hulls, and entire worlds seemed to tremble from the shock. Aruna's voice echoed across the command network, steady as iron. Hold formation. Remember what you fight for. Her soldiers obeyed. Every Varn cruiser fought like a blade of light guided by her command. But as hours passed, something went wrong. The human reinforcements didn't arrive. Aruna waited, scanning the tactical display. Where is Ryan? She demanded. He promised support. No signal came. The human frequencies were silent. Her heart tightened, but she refused to retreat. We fight on, she ordered. For 3 days and nights, her fleets held the line against impossible odds. She saw comrades fall, cities burn, and ships crumble into dust, but she never stopped. Her belief in Ryan's word kept her standing. Then came the final strike, a desperate maneuver to breach the Krell command ship. Aruna led the assault herself. Her ship rammed through enemy defenses, taking heavy fire. When the explosion came, the stars turned white. The galaxy believed she had died that day. Silence and ashes. When the war ended months later, humans claimed victory in distant sectors. The Varn Dominion mourned their lost princess. Commander Rian was nowhere to be found. Some said he had abandoned her. Others said he'd been forced to retreat. The truth was buried under politics and pride. But deep within the ruins of a broken star system, Princess Aruna was still alive. Her flagship had drifted into the void, engines dead, communication lost. For months she and her remaining crew fought to survive. Many perished, but she endured. The fire in her heart never faded, not from rage, but from the unanswered question that haunted her every night. Why didn't he come? She replayed every moment in her mind. The battles, the laughter, the quiet words on the command deck. Could it all have been a lie? Had the human she trusted turned away when she needed him most? Her people eventually found her. Half a year later, stranded among the wreckage, she returned to Varn not as a princess of hope, but as a queen hardened by loss. Yet in her eyes still lived the faint glimmer of something human. Faith. The distant whisper years passed. The Krell Dominion collapsed. The galaxy entered an uneasy peace. The name Ryan faded from human records, but among the Varn he became something else. A ghost story, a symbol of both trust and betrayal. Aruna ruled wisely, rebuilding what war had broken. But sometimes when she stood on her palace balcony and looked at the stars, she felt a pull toward one point of light, the system called Helion, where rumor said a human once lived in quiet exile. Her advisors told her to forget, but she couldn't. Because no matter how many worlds she conquered, no matter how many victories she claimed, one question still burned quietly inside her heart. The galaxy had changed. Peace had come, but it was not the peace anyone had dreamed of. Worlds once filled with the sound of war were now quiet. Ships floated like ghosts above silent planets, their battle scars fading slowly under time and dust. But even in peace, whispers of the past never truly died. Among those whispers was a name. Aruna, the princess who vanished in the last battle of the Alaris War and returned from death. Her people called her the Queen of the Broken Stars. Her enemies called her the storm that survived. But behind the shining titles, behind the endless parades and the golden crown, Aruna felt only one thing: emptiness. For years she had rebuilt her world, guided her armies, and restored cities once turned to ash. She had signed treaties, built bridges between alien races, and spoken of hope. The galaxy admired her. The history books praised her, yet none of it filled the quiet place in her heart that still asked one question: why didn't he come? The message from the Edge one quiet evening, as the twin moons of Varn cast silver light over the palace, Aruna walked through her private garden. The air smelled of soft rain, and her long cloak brushed against the leaves. She stopped at a fountain that once reflected the stars, now dimmed by city lights. A voice came from behind her. "Your Majesty," said Kale, her old advisor, bowing low. "We received a message from the border colonies. A human ship was sighted leaving the Helion system. Aruna turned sharply. Helion? Kale hesitated. Yes, Majesty. The report said the pilot's name was Ryan. For a moment the world went silent. The sound of the fountain faded and even the night wind seemed to stop. Are you certain? She asked. Kale nodded. The record matches his old command code, though humans claim he no longer serves their fleet. Aruna's fingers tightened on the edge of the fountain. For years she had told herself he was gone, that he had fallen in the war or vanished into some distant star. But if this message was true, then the one she once trusted above all others still lived. She took a slow breath. Prepare my ship, she said quietly. Majesty? Kale asked, uncertain. I'm going to Helion. But that system lies beyond our borders. The Council will object. Then they will object, she said, her voice firm. This is not a matter of politics. It is personal. Kyle lowered his head. He had served her long enough to know when her mind was made. The journey through the stars, the flagship Valira left Varn's orbit before dawn. Its silver wings cut through the void, engines glowing with soft blue fire. From her private cabin, Aruna watched the stars drift by. The journey was long, 8 jumps through unstable space, each one taking her farther from the core worlds and deeper into forgotten regions where humans built quiet lives. Her crew didn't ask questions. They knew their queen well enough to understand that silence was sometimes the best loyalty. During the voyage, Aruna found herself looking through the ship's archives. She replayed old transmissions, battles, reports, even small moments captured by chance. And there, hidden among thousands of files, she found a recording she had never seen. It was from the early days of the war. The image flickered, showing Ryan standing on a human deck, his uniform dusty, his expression calm. Princess Aruna, he said in the message. If you are hearing this, I'm already out of range. But remember this, and I never fought for medals or orders. I fought because I believed in what we started together. If the day comes when I cannot reach you, don't let that belief die. Aruna stared at the screen long after the message ended. The voice was the same, steady and sincere, yet the ache in her chest deepened. If he had meant every word, why did he never return? The world of Helion, the final jump brought the Valira into the Helion system, a quiet region far from the great space routes. The planet below was covered in green forests, golden fields, and small towns that glowed warmly under the sun. It was a world that looked peaceful, untouched by war. Aruna's ship descended slowly through the atmosphere. Her eyes took in the sight of rivers winding like silver threads, children playing near domed houses, and humans working on farmland with machines made for growth, not destruction. For a moment she felt envy. These people lived simply. They didn't carry crowns or weapons. They didn't command fleets. They just lived. As her ship landed near one of the small settlements, local citizens gathered in awe. No one had ever seen a Varn flagship this close before. The crowd murmured softly as the ship's ramp lowered, revealing Aruna in her royal armor, her cloak flowing like starlight behind her. An old man stepped forward, bowing respectfully. Welcome, traveler. We don't get many visitors here. May I ask who you are? Aruna's eyes moved past him, scanning the small crowd. She didn't see the face she was looking for. I seek someone, she said softly. A human named Rian. The man's expression changed. Him. You know him? The man nodded slowly. He lives beyond the ridge near the river valley. Keeps to himself mostly, kind man. Fixes machines, helps the townsfolk. Never speaks much about the war. Aruna's heart skipped. Thank you, she said, then turned toward her guards. Stay with the ship. I will go alone. Majesty, one began, but she raised a hand. This is not a mission, she said. It is a memory I must face. The river valley. The path to the valley was quiet, lined with trees that swayed gently in the afternoon wind. Birds sang from high branches, and the air smelled of earth and rain. Aruna walked slowly, her boots leaving light prints in the soil. She had walked through battlefields littered with metal and ash, but this place felt almost sacred. Each step seemed to wash away a piece of the war inside her. At the edge of the valley stood a small house made of stone and wood. Smoke rose from its chimney. A simple flag hung near the door, the faded emblem of the old human fleet. She stopped for a long time, just watching it. Then the door opened. A man stepped out, older than she remembered. His hair had turned silver and his uniform was gone, replaced by a simple tunic. But the moment he looked up and saw her, Aruna knew. It was Ryan. He froze. For a second he didn't move at all, as if time itself had stopped. The sunlight caught the faint scars on his hands, marks left by battles long past. "Aruna," he whispered, the word almost lost to the wind. She walked forward, each step heavy. When she stopped a few paces away, her voice trembled with a mix of anger and sorrow. "After all these years," she said softly, "this is where you've been?" He looked down. "Yes." Her voice grew colder. "You made a promise, Ryan. You said you would come. You said you would fight beside me. But when the last battle came, you were gone." The silence between them was sharper than any blade. Then she spoke again, louder this time. The words carrying the pain of every loss, every lonely night she had endured. "Have you forsaken me, human?" The question hung in the air. Ryan's face showed no anger, only deep regret. "No," he said quietly. "But I failed you." Her heart trembled. "You left me to die." "I tried to return," he said. "But the command pulled the fleets. They gave me orders to retreat. When I refused, they took my ship and my rank. I was exiled before I could reach you." Aruna stared at him, disbelief and confusion mixing in her eyes. "You're saying they stopped you?" "Yes," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I disobeyed them, but I was too late. By the time I found your signal, your ship was already gone. I thought you were dead." The wind rustled through the valley, carrying only the sound of leaves. For a long time, neither spoke. Aruna turned her gaze toward the sky, her eyes shimmering. "All these years I believed you abandoned me," she whispered. "Every night I asked myself why, and now, I don't know whether to hate you or forgive you." Ryan stepped forward slowly. "You don't have to forgive me. Just know this, I never stopped believing in you." The moment between stars, Aruna closed her eyes. The years of pain, the endless war, the loneliness of command, they all pressed down on her at once. But beneath it all, something else stirred. The faint warmth of truth. Maybe he hadn't forsaken her after all. Maybe he had been fighting a different kind of battle, one she never saw. She opened her eyes again, her voice softer now. "You once said peace is worth fighting for. Do you still believe that?" Ryan nodded slowly. "More than ever. I just wish I'd been strong enough to keep that promise." For the first time in years, Aruna smiled faintly, not out of joy but out of understanding. The war had taken everything from them, but not their humanity. As the sun dipped behind the valley hills, its light cast them both in gold. Two figures standing together after years of silence, their shadows long and intertwined. The valley was quiet now. Evening shadows stretched across the fields, painting everything in gold and purple. Princess Aruna stood near the small house, her cloak brushing against the soft grass. She had faced countless battles, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Standing before the human she had once trusted, the man who had shaped her destiny in ways no one else could. Ryan remained still, watching her carefully. His hands were calloused from years of labor and simple living, but his eyes still held the same calm determination she remembered. Yet now they were shadowed by regret, the weight of years lost pressing upon him. "Aruna," he began, but she held up a hand. "Don't," she said softly. "Not yet." She needed to hear the truth first, unguarded, without excuses or speeches. The anger in her chest burned hotter than any battlefield flame. Every lost friend, every destroyed city, every starship that had fallen under her command, they all came rushing back. "You promised," she said, her voice trembling. "You promised you would stand with me. And when the Alaris offensive began, you weren't there." Ryan's face hardened, though his eyes betrayed sorrow. "I was never going to leave you," he said quietly. "You must understand, I tried." Aruna took a step back. "Tried? You disappeared. My fleets were being destroyed, my soldiers were dying, and all I could do was fight alone."
"How is that trying?"
Ryan looked down, his voice almost breaking. "The Human Council, they gave orders. Reinforcements were pulled. They said your forces were expendable. I disobeyed, but they stripped my rank, my ship was taken, and I was exiled from the fleet. By the time I could act, it was too late." Aruna stared at him, disbelief and pain flickering across her face. "So you're saying it wasn't you?" "No," he said softly. "It was the Council, not me. I could not save you, and for that I have carried the guilt every day." Her hands clenched at her sides. For years, she had imagined betrayal in every human act she had witnessed. For years, she had blamed him silently, believing the man she trusted had abandoned her. And now, she was not sure whether to feel relief or anger. "Do you know what it felt like?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly. "To fight every battle, to watch my people die, and to know that the one human I trusted might have turned away?" "I know," Ryan said quietly. "I have known it too. Every day I imagined what you must have felt. But I never stopped believing in you, Aruna. Even when I could do nothing, even when I was powerless, I hoped you would survive." Her knees nearly buckled under the weight of her emotions. She had endured storms, asteroid strikes, and armies that seemed endless, but this truth cut deeper than any blade. "You stayed away," she said softly, almost to herself. "And I believed you forsook me." "No," he said again. "I did not. And I never will." For a long moment neither spoke. The wind rustled the trees around them, carrying the distant sound of a river flowing calmly through the valley. It was a sound so peaceful, so ordinary, that it almost made her forget the war, the loss, the endless nights of pain. Finally, Aruna's eyes lifted to meet his. There was still anger there, but it was mingled with something else, understanding and perhaps the faintest glimmer of forgiveness. I don't know if I can forgive so easily," she admitted. "The war, it changed everything. So many lives were lost, I know," he said, "and I carry that with me too. But I am here now. That is all I can do. I can't undo the past, but I can face the future with you." Her heart ached, but she knew he spoke truth. He had stood by her in spirit when he could not in action. That counted for more than any fleet, more than any strategy, more than any law. The human who waited over the next days. Aruna walked through Helion with Ryan. She saw the life he had built. Small, simple, honest. Gardens that glowed under the sun. Machines he had repaired for the villagers. Shelters he had helped rebuild. It was nothing like the grandeur of Varn, nothing like the fleets she commanded, but it was life. Real life. He had survived in silence, never seeking recognition, never asking for thanks. And yet he had waited, not for medals, not for glory, but for the chance to keep his promise in any way he could. Aruna watched him work with the villagers, teaching children how to repair small drones, helping farmers repair irrigation machines. She saw the same patience, the same quiet strength that had drawn her to him years ago, and for the first time since she returned from the war, she felt a sense of calm. "Why did you stay here?" she asked him one afternoon as they watched the sunset over golden fields. "Because I had nowhere else to go," he said simply. "The fleet abandoned me. The council had no place for me, but I could stay where my heart belonged." "And my heart always belonged to you." Aruna swallowed hard. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that shook her. "You were foolish," she said softly, though there was no anger in her tone. "You should have returned to your people. You could have commanded ships again, led fleets, been celebrated. I would have been a hero in someone else's story," he said. "But heroes don't keep promises. I wanted to survive so I could find you again, even if it took years." Her eyes softened. She had led armies, captured fortresses, and faced death countless times. And yet here was a human who had faced exile, isolation, and despair, and still kept faith. The weight of words that evening. Under a sky full of stars, Aruna finally spoke of what had haunted her all these years. "Do you know what I feared most?" she asked. "Not the Krell, not the battles, not even death. I feared that you would not care, that I had placed all my trust in someone who had abandoned me." Ryan stepped closer. "And now?" "Now," she said, her voice trembling. "I see that I was wrong. You did care. You never abandoned me." He reached out, hesitated, then let his hand hover near hers. She did not move away. She could not. After years of uncertainty, after so many nights of longing and doubt, the truth was here. He had not forsaken her. Her heart, worn and battle-scarred, felt something that had been missing since the Alaris offensive. Relief. The choice between past and future. In the days that followed, Aruna had to make a choice. The Varn Council would soon request her return. They would expect her to lead her people in rebuilding fleets, fortresses, and alliances. But she had discovered something more important: the value of loyalty, trust, and the quiet strength of a human who refused to yield. She could no longer lead alone. She could not ignore the man who had kept his word in the only way he could. Rian, meanwhile, had begun to rebuild his own life in a new way, no longer defined by fleets or medals, but by purpose. He had waited decades, and now that Aruna had returned, he knew his role was far from over. The sunset reflected off the river valley, painting everything gold. Aruna turned to him. "We have much to decide," she said softly. "Not just for us, but for our worlds." Ryan nodded. "Then we will face it together." It was a promise forged in fire, tempered by years of silence and hope. A promise neither the stars nor time could erase. The quiet before the storm, Helion slept under the twin moons, unaware that a queen and a human commander stood in the valley below, planning futures far larger than any one life. For the first time in years, Aruna felt a sense of purpose beyond war. She had returned victorious, but the real victory was not over enemies or planets. It was the discovery that humanity's strength was not just in fleets or weapons. It was in loyalty, endurance, and the courage to wait even when all hope seemed lost. And in that quiet valley, she realized something else. The galaxy would soon see the true power of humans, not as conquerors, not as soldiers, but as beings who could endure betrayal, loss, and time itself, and still stand, still hope, and still fight for what they believed in. She turned to Ryan, her voice firm yet soft. "Tomorrow we begin a new chapter, together." Ryan nodded. Together. The stars above glimmered in agreement, as if the universe itself recognized the bond that had survived centuries of war, silence, and doubt. And somewhere deep inside, Aruna knew that the hardest battles were over, but the greatest victories were yet to come. The valley lay quiet under Helion's twin moons, yet the air between Princess Aruna and Commander Rian was heavy with unspoken words. For days she had walked the land, seen the life he had built, and felt the warmth of his unwavering loyalty. Yet questions remained, burning questions that demanded answers. "Ryan," she said one evening, as they stood on a ridge overlooking the golden fields, "tell me everything. I need to know the truth about what happened during the Alaris offensive. I need to understand why you did not return when I needed you most." He inhaled deeply, looking out across the valley where wind swayed the tall grass. "You deserve the truth, Aruna, the full truth." She nodded, gripping her cloak. The evening sky glowed with orange and purple hues, but she barely noticed. Her mind had been full of war, of betrayal, of silence, and she needed clarity above all else. The Human Council's orders. Rian began slowly, carefully, choosing his words. "When the final battle began, I was ready to join you with the reinforcements I had gathered. Our plan was precise. We would support your fleets and break through the Krell defenses. But the Human Council had other ideas. They feared a full alliance between Varn and humans. They said it would make us too powerful, that it might threaten other human colonies." Aruna's eyes widened. "They stopped you?" "They interfered while my forces were under attack." "Yes," he said quietly. "They ordered all reinforcements to retreat. I was forbidden from helping you." Her heart clenched. She had fought alone. She had suffered losses that could never be replaced, and all because humans who claimed to be her allies had chosen caution over loyalty. Ryan continued. "I tried to defy them. I took my ship and prepared to jump to your location, but their orders carried weight. I was declared insubordinate, stripped of rank, and my ship was confiscated. By the time I found a way to travel, you were already gone. I searched for months. But you were lost in the void." Aruna's hands shook. The fury that had simmered in her heart for years surged, and yet it was tempered by a new understanding. "It was not him. It had never been him. You endured everything," she whispered. "All those battles, all those losses. And I blamed you." Ryan lowered his gaze. "You did what you had to. You fought because someone had to. I am not your enemy." The weight of responsibility. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, heavy as stone. The stars above reflected faintly in Aruna's eyes, revealing the mixture of anger, relief, and sorrow she felt. "You carried the burden alone," she said softly, "and I carried mine. I believed you abandoned me. I questioned humanity itself because of your absence." Ryan's voice was steady, though quiet. "I never stopped believing in you. Every day I imagined you surviving, growing stronger, leading your people. I may have been powerless to help, but I hoped that hope itself would reach you." Her eyes softened. The enormity of his patience, his endurance, struck her. He had survived exile, political judgment, and isolation not for glory, but so that one day he might stand with her again. Do you know what it took for me to forgive myself? Ryan continued. I lived believing you might never return, that I had failed not just you but the alliance we had forged. And yet here you are. Aruna's heart thudded in her chest. For years she had imagined betrayal in every act, imagined abandonment in every silence, and now, faced with the truth, the weight of misunderstanding pressed down upon her. The Council's Furian walked with her toward a small hill overlooking the distant Helian plains. They feared unity, he explained. They feared that humans and Varn working together could change the balance of power. They did not trust you, Aruna, because you represented something they could not control. And me, they thought my loyalty would sway their colonies. Aruna shook her head. They thought fear could stop loyalty? That they could prevent trust from existing? Ryan smiled faintly, the ghost of his old humor returning. Fear is powerful, yes, but it cannot destroy what is real. Loyalty, trust, they are stronger than fear, stronger than fleets, stronger than orders. And that is why I survived, because I believed in something larger than their politics. She studied him, her gaze unwavering. In that moment she realized the depth of human endurance, not in machines, not in weapons, but in quiet strength, patience, and faith. You waited, she said softly. Yes, he said, because I promised. And some promises are worth more than life itself. Aruna swallowed hard. Her mind raced back to every battle, every lonely night, every moment she had questioned herself. It had been humanity's fear, not his, that had caused her suffering. The decision for days they sat together in the valley, walking among the fields, speaking quietly. The sun rose and fell, casting light and shadow over their shared silence. Aruna had to make a choice. She could return to Varn, demand accountability, and let the Council face judgment for their betrayal. Or she could forgive, rebuild, and recognize the truth, that humanity's strength lay not in obedience to fear, but in the courage of a few who would not yield. Her people had suffered. Her armies had bled, and yet she saw now that the smallest acts of courage had shaped her world far more than any command, fleet, or weapon. Ryan, she said finally, as they stood beneath the twin moons, what would you do if it were up to you? If you could decide how this ends? He looked at her, his eyes steady, reflecting the moonlight. I would stand for truth. I would honor loyalty. I would fight for the future, not for punishment. Aruna considered his words. Her anger had fueled her for years, but her judgment now was clear. Punishment would not restore the lives lost. It would not heal the scars, but recognition of loyalty, courage, and truth. That could shape the future. Yes, she said, nodding slowly. Then we rebuild. We do not destroy. We honor those who kept faith. Rian smiled faintly. Then we begin together. The quiet strength of humanity. Over the next days, Aruna and Rian worked in Helion, not as royalty and soldier, but as two beings united by trust and shared history. They restored old machinery, helped farmers with irrigation, and even assisted in repairing the small orbital station that monitored the system. The people of Helion watched in awe. They had heard legends of the Varn princess and the human commander, but seeing them work quietly, humbly, showed a different side of power. It was not in weapons, not in titles, but in actions guided by conscience, honor, and endurance. Aruna began to understand fully the essence of human strength. It was in the courage to act when powerless, in the hope that persisted when all seemed lost, and in the loyalty that endured despite fear, politics, and time. Rian, too, saw that Aruna's understanding of strength was different from his own. She had faced empires, endured betrayal, and carried the weight of her people's survival. And yet she could recognize the strength in someone who had waited quietly, endured silently, and honored a promise in spite of impossible odds. Together, they stood as a living testament to the power of unity, trust, and loyalty. Preparing for the future as the twin moons rose high in the Helian sky, Aruna looked toward the horizon, her expression calm but determined. The galaxy had changed, and new challenges would arise. But she now knew that strength was not measured by fleets or weapons alone. It was measured by the courage to endure, the patience to wait, and the loyalty to keep promises even when the world seemed to oppose you. She turned to Ryan. Tomorrow, we return to Varn, but we do so not to punish, not to seek revenge, but to show them what loyalty truly means. We will lead by example. Ryan nodded. And they will see that humanity is not just a collection of fleets or laws. Humanity is endurance, hope, and heart, and you have reminded me of that, Aruna. She smiled faintly. Then it is time the galaxy sees it as well. The night sky shimmered above them, filled with distant stars and possibilities yet to unfold. For the first time in years, Aruna felt a sense of hope that was deeper than victory, stronger than revenge, and brighter than any medal or title. The war had ended, yes, but the real work had only begun. And together she and Ryan would face it, not as princess and soldier, but as allies, as friends, and as witnesses to the quiet, enduring power of humanity. The journey back to Varn was quiet. The flagship Velira glided through space, carrying Princess Aruna and Commander Ryan toward the heart of a world that had changed while they endured absence and uncertainty. Aruna looked out of the viewport. The stars stretched endlessly, cold and distant, yet familiar. After years of war, of exile, and of waiting, she finally felt something she had not known since the Alaris offensive: certainty. Not just in her power, but in the strength of the human beside her, and in the unbreakable spirit that humanity could carry across the galaxy. Ryan stood behind her silently, his hands resting on the railing. He had endured exile, fear, and isolation. He had carried the burden of his council's betrayal, yet he had kept his promise, surviving quietly so he could stand with her once more. It was the kind of strength no weapon could match, the kind of endurance that defined humans themselves. Returned to Varn, when the Velira approached Varn's orbit, the capital city below shone like a beacon. Cities that had once been shattered by war were rebuilt, shining towers and silver bridges stretching across rivers and valleys. The people had not forgotten their princess. They lined the streets and towers waiting for her arrival. Some waved banners, others knelt in quiet respect. Yet Aruna felt little joy. Her focus was not on celebration. It was on the council, on the leaders who had feared her strength and obstructed Ryan's aid, and on the moment when she would prove that loyalty and courage were more powerful than politics. Rian stood beside her as the ship descended. The people cheered, but he said nothing. This was not a victory parade. It was a reckoning, one built not on anger but on truth. As they landed in the palace courtyard, the gates opened to admit them. Soldiers and citizens alike bowed as Aruna stepped down, her armor glinting in the afternoon sun. Her eyes swept the assembled council members, all standing in formal attire, waiting to address her. Confronting the council, Aruna approached the head of the council, her posture regal and commanding. "I have returned," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Not as one seeking vengeance, but as one who seeks the truth. I have seen the cost of fear. I have witnessed what happens when loyalty is questioned, when courage is ignored, and when promises are broken." The council murmured uneasily. Some shifted in their seats while others tried to hide their discomfort. They had built an empire on caution and careful strategy, but the princess's words carried a weight that no political maneuver could deflect. One of the council leaders spoke, his voice trembling slightly. "Your Majesty, you feared me," Aruna interrupted. "You feared what could happen if humans and Varn worked together. You pulled away support from the one human who kept his word to me. And as a result, many lives were lost, and the outcome of battles was made far harder than it needed to be." The hall was silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then she turned to Ryan, her eyes softening. "But this human," he did not yield. "He survived exile, carried the burden of your fear, and kept his promise to me in the only way he could. That is the strength I honor. That is the loyalty I respect. That is the kind of humanity that inspires my people." Showing the power of humanity, Ryan stepped forward. His voice, calm but firm, echoed in the hall. "I did not act against the council lightly. I followed orders as best I could, but I could not abandon someone who depended on me. My strength comes not from weapons or ships, but from the courage to endure, the hope to continue, and the promise I made. That is the essence of humanity." Aruna looked at him, pride and admiration shining in her eyes. "Do you see them?" she asked softly. "Do you see why I returned? Not for revenge, but to show what loyalty truly means. To show that even when leaders fail, even when politics obstruct, humans endure." The council shifted uneasily, realizing the truth in her words. They had relied on fear and control, believing they could suppress the bond between worlds and between people. and yet the bond had survived. Your courage has inspired not just me, but the entire Dominion, Aruna continued. You remind us all that the galaxy is shaped not by fear, but by those who endure, who hope, and who fight for what is right. Rebuilding together in the following weeks, Aruna and Rian worked side by side to rebuild what had been lost. Not just cities and fleets, but trust, alliances, and understanding between species. The human colonies that had feared too much now saw a different side of humanity. One that was loyal, patient, and capable of inspiring even alien races to fight for peace rather than domination. They trained together, not just soldiers, but diplomats, engineers, and leaders. They shared stories of survival, of courage, of small acts that had changed the course of battles. The galaxy watched and learned that power was not only in fleets or weapons, but in endurance, loyalty, and the strength of character. Children on Varn and humans alike learned of Ryan's quiet courage, and of Aruna's wisdom in leading not just by command, but by example. Their story spread like starlight, reminding all who heard it that greatness came in many forms, sometimes quiet, sometimes unseen, but always enduring. The future shaped by unity one evening. As the twin moons rose over Varn, Aruna and Rian stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Below them, people walked freely, laughing, working, and living lives touched by the courage of a few. Do you see it? Aruna asked softly. Rian nodded. I see it. Humanity's strength is not in weapons or fleets. It is in hope, endurance, and the courage to honor a promise no matter the cost. Aruna smiled. Then let this be our guide. Let every world see that fear cannot break loyalty, that silence cannot destroy courage, and that humans cannot be underestimated. They stood together, two figures under the stars, representatives of two worlds that had once fought side by side and would now rebuild side by side. The galaxy is vast, Rian said quietly. There will be new challenges, but now we face them together. Aruna turned to him, her eyes steady and resolute. Together, a legacy of courage. In the years that followed, Varn and human colonies grew closer than ever. Trade flourished, knowledge was shared, and fleets were rebuilt not for war, but to protect life and explore the stars. Aruna's leadership became legendary, not because she was a princess or a warrior, but because she understood the value of loyalty, courage, and hope. Ryan's quiet heroism became a symbol of humanity's enduring spirit, a reminder that even when all seems lost, some will endure, some will hope, and some will stand for what is right, no matter the cost. And across the galaxy, the story of a princess and a human who refused to yield inspired generations. They spoke of battles won, of alliances forged, and of a promise kept in the darkest of times. It was not just a story of war. It was a story of what humanity could be at its best, enduring, loyal, hopeful, and impossible to break. The final moment years later, as they watched a new sunrise over Varn, Aruna turned to Ryan. Do you remember when I asked if you had forsaken me? She asked, a small smile on her face. He smiled back. I never did, and I never will. She placed her hand over his. Then let the galaxy remember this, that even when leaders fail, even when darkness rises, humans endure, and that endurance is our greatest weapon. Ryan nodded. Together we will show them all. The sunlight reflected off the towers and rivers below, casting the city in gold. Ships passed overhead, peaceful now, symbols of hope and unity, and somewhere in the stars beyond their story traveled. A reminder that the greatest victories were not always in battle. Sometimes they were in courage, loyalty, and the unyielding human spirit. Princess Aruna and Commander Rian stood together, ready for whatever the future might bring. The war had ended, the betrayals were revealed, and the galaxy had seen the enduring power of humanity. And in that moment, nothing could break them.